Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 709, and today's date is July 6th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Central Bankers Now Pushing for Bail-ins in Greece. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that governments continually manipulate the numbers to make the situation in each one of the countries throughout Europe, the United States, Canada, Australia, they make it seem a lot better than it is. They don't want people waking up and saying, hey, wait a minute, do we have some type of a problem? I mean, out in the UK, they gave out a report saying this is the homelessness rate. Well, it looks like the government statistics on homelessness among the young is completely off because the University of Cambridge, the housing experts came out with their figures and said that, yeah, the homelessness among young people is 3 times higher than the government figures. While the Department of Communities and Local Government puts the number of homelessness between 16 and 25 years old at 26,852, the study that was done by Cambridge University Center for Housing and Planning Research really puts the number at 83,000. And they're saying that this is coming from the researchers, they're saying that this is worryingly high, and they're not finished looking at the situation, and they're saying this initial projection might even be higher than what they're showing right now. And we see governments continually manipulate the numbers to convince us that we don't have any type of problem anywhere in any of these private Western Central Bank countries. Now, over the weekend, we understand that the Greek government had a referendum. The people came out, they voted. They wanted a yes, let's go with the central banker plan. No, we object to that plan. And who knows, that might lead to a Greek exit, but we're going to have to watch and see how that goes. But when we look at the situation, we saw that the people said, okay, you know something? We voted for Tspiras, and we have decided that, yeah, we don't want to live like this anymore. We don't want the central banking plan that puts us into austerity, doesn't allow us to get jobs, keeps the youth unemployment around 55%, the adult population unemployment very close to 30%. They're completely done with it. And the central bankers can't understand this. I don't understand. I thought they loved austerity. If we just give you more debt, everything is fine. No, that debt goes to the banking system. It doesn't go to the people. But it looks like Varoufakis decided to step down after this because he doesn't get along with a lot of the European central bankers. And I would say he would be the perfect choice because you don't want someone that goes along with someone. You want someone that questions stuff, that says, you know something, wait a minute, I don't agree with this. This is not right. And sometimes you can't come up with some type of mutual decision because you're too far apart. And sometimes you have to go off on your own and say, you know something, maybe we can't be part of this system anymore. Maybe it's not good for the country. And we see he's being replaced by Tsakalotis, and he stepped in many times for Varoufakis. Now, I don't know if this person, and it might seem that this person might have the ability to negotiate with the European central bankers a little bit easier than Varoufakis. And we're going to have to watch this situation very closely, but I believe they should have kept Varoufakis in there. I think he is the right person to do this, even though he might not get along with some of the central bankers. But then again, do you really want to get along with them, or are you trying to protect your country? Are you trying to do right by your people? It's not about being liked. It's not about getting along. It's about, you know something, this is a negotiation, and sometimes it doesn't always work out the way the central bankers want. But it looks like he stepped down. And right now they're trying to negotiate, and I don't understand how a negotiation is going to work at this point because the people said they object to the central banking plan. Now, if Greece puts forth a proposal, the central bank is going to say, okay, let's see, there's no austerity. We're not cutting pensions. Yeah, we're not going to write off the debt. We don't agree to this. So it's going to be back where we started. Unless Greece decides, let's start moving away from the EU. Let's maybe create a parallel currency. Print up the drachma. Yes, it might be devalued. Some are saying by 80%. They might even look at Russia. And we understand that Tspiras met with Putin, had a phone call with him, discussing what has gone on here. And we see at this point in time, the central bankers, they want one thing and one thing only. They want their money. They want the country in debt, and they want that country to pay the interest on that debt. This is how they make their money. They steal the natural resources. They sell it back to the country a little bit later for pennies on the dollar. This is how they make their profit. They don't want to write off the debt. They want it repaid with interest. And we see right now, the central bankers, they might be getting ready to maybe go into the banking system. They might be ready to go in and take the people's money. Because as we know, what they want is their money with interest. And they'll do whatever they possibly can to get it. We see the banks in Greece might be closed until Wednesday. Now the question is, why Wednesday? Why do we have to wait for the banks to reopen? Well, this will put another 48 hours of calm before things really start happening. Because when we look at the situation, we see that a lot of these ATMs, they're going to be running out of cash, most likely Tuesday, the latest Wednesday. And then people start getting nervous and afraid. Maybe rioting starts at this point. And we can see already that the ECB has gotten together, their governing council. They decided today to adjust the haircuts on collateral accepted by the banks of Greece for ELA. In other words, the ECB increased its haircut from roughly 50% to just about 60%, above which level depositor bail-ins begin. And there are some reports out there saying that the bail-in are going to happen with those people who have 8,000 or more euros in the banking system. And this decision for these haircuts kind of makes it clear that they're going to go and get the people's money. They're going to be Cyprused. But again, we're going to watch out. We'll watch the entire thing. We'll see how the new finance minister does. We'll see if they come up with any type of deal. But I don't understand how the deal is going to work, because so far both sides couldn't get together before. Now the people voted. They don't like the central banking deal. So the central bankers have to change to meet the people's requirement. And I don't see it happening right now. But anything is possible. I see bail-ins coming in. The Austrian government is looking at this situation, and we understand that they had a petition. Over 200 or 1,000 so people signed it that they want to leave the Eurozone. And they are saying, yeah, it looks like the referendum in Greece is showing that the Greek people want to leave the Eurozone. And they're saying it's inevitable, that they will leave the Eurozone. It makes it very hard to stay in the Eurozone when they reject the deal with the central bankers. So when we look at this entire situation, we see this could have ripple effects throughout other countries like France, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Austria, which already wants to leave the Eurozone. It might even destabilize the Balkan region. And those countries are like Bulgaria, Macedonia, and they might have problems going forth. So we're going to have to watch this completely to see how this unfolds. Because as we see today, things are really heating up. Central bankers are looking at the situation, scratching their heads. What is their next move? And at this point in time, they have two moves. Either they cave on the deal and they write off some of the debt, or they lock down the banks and they go in for the balance and they take the people's money. Again, the central bankers have no allegiance whatsoever to a people or to a government. You can see it. The people have spoken. They voted. They said, no, we don't agree with the central bank. But the central bankers, they don't care. They don't care what the people say or want. Actually, if it was a very, very close type of vote, I'm sure they would have tried to swing it to the yes area, but I guess it was too far apart and you just can't really manipulate it that much to make it look like that. But all throughout the time, the propaganda was out there and they were saying that, oh, look, most of the people want to stay with the Eurozone. Most of the people are saying yes, which made no sense when we reported on this because most of the people in the country, I'd say majority of them, voted for Tspiras, who said no more austerity, no more of these type of deals, and we can see they're sticking to it. Here in the United States, what do we see? Well, things are not looking good. The economy is completely falling apart. The national debt is completely frozen. So what that means is there's no spending going on, which we know is fake, phony, and false. They just froze the clock to make it look good. And we know they're continually spending. We see that manufacturing PMI declined once again. It has not improved. Markets turned to report the June service PMI, which came out at 54.8, just under the 54.9 expected, down from 56 in May. This is the lowest reading since January. Additionally, job creation eased to a 3-month low. We see the service ISM, that also missed, rising from 55.7 to 56, below the 56.4 consensus increase. And the reason for this is imports and exports disappointing, with imports dropping into an outright contraction down from 53.5 to 48. And when we look at the entire economy here in the United States, everyone's out there saying, yes, we're in a recovery. This is what it looks like. The recovery looks like layoffs. It looks like stores closing. It looks like part-time employment. It looks like the housing market falling apart. It looks like mortgage departments laying off people. It looks like manipulated statistical numbers. This is what our government officials, or I say government employees, are trying to convince us of. They're trying to convince us that we're in a recovery, and we know we're not. We see other countries around the world preparing and getting ready for the dollar collapse, getting ready for the system to implode. We see that Afghanistan, Pakistan, they're going to meet with Putin to talk about the Shanghai Cooperation. We see Egypt has sent in an application for a dialogue partner in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And right now, Russia is going to offer the BRIC partners a roadmap for financing projects from the New Development Bank. The roadmap is closely linked with the project of the Strategy of Economic Cooperation, which was in the works of Russia and its BRICS partners since 2013. We believe that this strategy will be adopted this week in UFA as a medium-term program of action. The strategy identifies priority areas of the BRIC cooperation in such sectors as power, manufacturing, mining, agribusiness, innovative technologies, and more. And we know that the BRIC system was created out of the U.S. not giving the voting rights, which they promised back in 2010, to the emerging economies. So they decided, you know what? We will band together. We'll create the BRICS system. We'll create the AIIB. We understand that in Russia, what they are doing, bypassing the dollar, was created out of the sanctions that were imposed on Russia for not being involved in Ukraine. Well, the United States is saying they're completely involved and they have troops there, and we know that's fake, phony, and false. We know this is a ploy for the United States to provoke Russia into doing something, starting something, so they can start the war. But Russia is playing it cool. They said, you know something, we don't need the dollar. We'll create our own payment system. We'll work with China and other countries. We'll put a ban on accepting food from the European nations, which has hurt them dramatically. Their economies are hurting. Russia is improving. And many countries now are looking at the situation and they are making deals with China, bilateral trade agreement with the yuan renminbi. The yuan is slated to become a reserve currency this fall. The United States is going to try to stop it any way they possibly can. And we can see at this point in time that all of these countries are preparing to switch at the right time. They're dropping the reserves of the dollar and ramping up on the yuan, renminbi, ruble. And again, we see what's going on in the Middle East. Once that starts to really fall apart and the governments there, the people, I'm not talking about the puppet governments, I'm talking about the people of the countries, completely kick out the puppet regime, take over their countries, start selling the oil, not using the dollar. This is when things really start to heat up. And we are approaching that time period. Here in the United States, we understand the U.S. government, central bankers, are trying to impose laws to every single state. They're continually coming out with new laws. But what's very interesting is that Americans now are increasingly in favor of states being able to ignore the federal court rulings. And this is coming from a new poll. This is a poll by Rasmussen Reports. It reveals that 33% of eligible voters in the United States believe that states have the right to ignore federal rulings. And this number is rising. It is up by more than 1/3 from just 5 months ago. And we are seeing that the people are saying, you know something? Some of these laws coming out of the federal government, they make no sense. And the states have every right to say, you know something? We are not going to follow them. A lot of the states, for the gun laws that are created, they create laws that say they don't have to follow them. And that can be with any type of law. Because what the federal government is doing is they're trying to remove the rights of the people. They're trying to remove free speech, the right to bear arms. They want everyone searched. They want everyone spied on. And they're continually pushing the agenda. I mean, we look right now, they're using hate speech. And these laws of hate speech, they're going around the world right now. It's not just the United States. But we see here in the United States that they're using it to keep people quiet, to limit free speech. The truth is that these hate speech laws that are being implemented all over the planet are not just about preventing speech that promotes violence or genocide against a particular group of people. Instead, these laws are written in such a way that anyone that says something that offends or insults someone else is guilty of hate speech. This is coming out of the American Bar Association. This is how they define hate speech. Hate speech is speech that offends, threatens, or insults groups based on race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, or other traits. So basically, if I say something that offends or insults you, there's a very good chance that I have just committed hate speech. Now again, free speech, you can say whatever you want. If the other group doesn't like it, well, you're still allowed to say it. Yes, their feelings might be hurt. They might not want to listen. People who are saying it on a radio show or a TV program have the right to shut it off, but those people have the right to say it. Because who decides what is right or wrong with speech? Because once you do that, it is no longer free, it is controlled, it is permitted speech. Hate speech is not the same thing as free speech, wrote CNN anchor Chris Cuomo. Hate speech is excluded from protection. Well, no. If Chris Cuomo would just read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it says we all have the right to free speech. It doesn't say, well, if it's hateful, you can't say it. No, all speech is allowed. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen. So what we're seeing here is they're trying to use this in a way to control speech because it's very broad in what they're saying. Because all someone has to do is say, that insults me. Well, there you go, hate speech. It's very simple. I mean, here's something from the University of Wisconsin about racist. So if you say anything that has to do with one of these things, there are more, but here are some of them. Asking someone where they are from or where they are born. Well, that's racist. Saying that you're not a racist makes you racist. Complimenting an Asian person by telling them they are very articulate. Uttering the phrase, there is only one race, the human race. Believing that most qualified person, regardless of race, should get the job. So the ultimate goal here is basically to shut down all free speech. If it offends someone, you can't say it. It's back to what they're trying to do. They're trying to remove the rights of the people. We see it in Common Core. I mean, let's put all this together here. We see it in Common Core. We see it with the Second Amendment. We see the police searching people's vehicles, searching people without any probable cause or a warrant, which actually they need a warrant. We see the government spying on every single person, then lying about them spying on every person. They have already violated all of the rights, and now they're trying to push their agenda of getting rid of free speech. This is why they started out with the little free speech zones where people would go. If you wanted to protest, you go in this area. Colleges have certain areas where you're allowed to speak freely. And now they're taking a step further. It sounds good on the surface, but in reality, it's controlling what you say. That is it. Now, out in Canada, they already have a law about limiting free speech. Anyone who is offended by something you have said or written can make a complaint to the Human Rights Commission and tribunals in Canada. This organization, or this organization for police speech, penalizes citizens for any expression deemed in opposition to a particular sexual behavior or protected group identified under sexual orientation. It takes only one complaint against a person to be brought before the tribunal, costing the defendant tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. We see in New Zealand, they are pushing the Harmful Digital Communication Act, which criminalizes plenty of speech mainly through the use of broad wording. A digital communication should not be threatening, intimidating, or menacing, they say. A digital communication should not be grossly offensive to a reasonable person in the position of the affected individual. A digital communication should not incite or encourage an individual to commit suicide. Well, how do you know what's going to trigger something in someone for them to commit suicide? You don't. And all of these are very broad. And this is all about cyberbullying. But what it's really about is stopping people from speaking freely. Now, this is only in the digital world that they have the Harmful Digital Communications Act. If you're saying it to someone outside of this, it's okay. But on social media and other digital forms, it is restrictive, which is very interesting. And we see ultimately this bill is overly broad. It risks limiting our freedom of expression and the important role of the media in our democracy. And it introduces a precedent that one thing can be legal offline, but illegal online. So we see what they're doing. Each one of these governments, and there's many other countries that have these type of laws, they are cracking down on free speech. They're trying to limit it. They don't want people saying a certain thing. And if they do, they want the ability to block it easily. And we can see this is how they're trying to take control and keep control. We see many governments around the world, especially here in the United States, who are continually spying on the American people, have purchased hacking software from an Italian company. The FBI, Drug Enforcement Administration, the U.S. Army have all bought controversial software that allows users to take remote control of suspects' computers, recording their calls, emails, keystrokes, and even activating their cameras, according to documents leaked from the software's Italian manufacturer called the Hacking Team. And it seems that this company was hacked, and they found out that a lot of their clients go by code names, like the FBI is called Phoebe, DEA is called Katie, CIA is called Marianne. And they buy this software to hack into people's computers to take control, to listen in on conversations. So if you really think about it, who is doing the hacking today? It seems like it's our government agencies once again. And we can see at this point in time, a lot of them use it without warrants. And a lot of these agencies don't even want to report that they don't even want to report that they even have them. So we can see right now that spying is going on everywhere. They violate the people's rights. They don't care. The NSA doesn't care. The U.S. government doesn't care, because they know they need to keep tabs on every person. They're looking for certain keywords. They create social profiles. They put them in a certain group. They like to spy on judges, government employees, just in case they need to blackmail them to maybe sway a decision, maybe to rule on a court proceeding. And they are continually doing this. And of course, they're lying to the American people that, no, we don't do any of this. But they do. We see from WikiLeaks, the U.S. National Security Agency spied on the Brazilian president's phone, but also listened in on senior ministers in the cabinet, including finance ministers. And this is coming out of WikiLeaks, which is a published document, and they got this information. So right now we're seeing that the NSA is spying on Germany, spying on France, spying on the people in Switzerland, in Brazil. Is this how you treat your allies? Is this how you treat countries that you want to work with? Because eventually these countries are going to turn on you. And they're not going to cooperate with you. When things start heading south and things start falling apart, you'll see how fast these countries jump ship and say, you know something, we're not going along with this anymore. And I see this definitely coming. I see countries saying, you know something, we've had enough. We're moving over to the new system. The U.S. government central bankers, you're off on your own. And of course, as we know, for them to keep their system and not be blamed for this entire collapse of the private Western central bank world, they're going to start war. And we see it coming. We see McCain is out in Afghanistan during July 4th. And he's saying that They need to reassess the situation here in Afghanistan. We cannot have more troops leave. We need to add troops to Afghanistan. Well, at this point in time, we're not seeing troops leave. Troops are being added into Afghanistan. Might not be in combat roles, but they're bringing them in for training, for advisory. And now we see that they want more troops in this area. And like I said, they're never going to leave this area. It's strategic to the United States. It borders Russia. China and Russia are in this country. Afghanistan is looking to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They have a huge deposit of copper, lithium. They have a pipeline that runs through Afghanistan. The United States government central bankers grows poppies to support their covert missions by selling opium across the globe. They are never leaving this area. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the situation is escalating there. We understand that McCain was in Ukraine also, and he was talking about how they were going to be completely independent of Russian gas, and we see that Russia cut off Ukrainian gas feed as of July 1st because of non-payment. And now the Ukrainian cabinet has agreed to establish a 1 billion energy reserve fund to finance the purchase, transport, and storage of gas. Ukraine's state-run Naftogaz is tasked with establishing the fund, borrowing from abroad using state guarantees. They will use the Stabilization Energy Fund to purchase natural gas for interconnection and access to gas transportation networks. And they will store it in their underground tanks. You have to remember, we are coming, and well, we're already in the summer months. They're out of the winter months, so they don't care if the gas is cut off right now. They're going to be getting gas from different areas. They're setting up the fund to pay for it. They want to be completely independent of Russia. They need to do this because when they start the offensive, they don't want to be dependent on Russia. They don't want to have anything to do with Russia, and they want the ability to have the gas in the country because they know they'll be heading into the winter months and they will need this gas. This is why they are doing this at this point, because we can see that things are building up there. The training is continually happening. The United States and other countries are in there training the Ukrainian forces, and this is ongoing. They're getting ready to strike the southeastern area and then eventually go after Crimea. Because like I said before, the central bankers have not got what they paid for. They paid for the entire country and they have not received it. Now, as we know, Poroshenko, he is not following the Minsk II agreement whatsoever. He's doing whatever he wants. He's making it look like he's following it. And the world is saying, look, he is doing it. He says he's doing constitutional reforms. He says he's doing this and that. But really, he's not following it to the specifics of what he's supposed to do. We see that he is creating new constitutional reforms, but he's not including the southeastern people. And Ukraine's new constitutional reform gives absolute power to the Ukrainian president. The constitutional reform has been announced by Poroshenko to strengthen and expand the presidential power without pursuing a policy of decentralization. The word federalization is forbidden in Ukraine. That is why they are using the term decentralization to bring the presidential power closer to the community level. And they're not dealing with the southeastern people. He wants ultimate power. You know, he signed an order where he can declare martial law at any point in time. He can bring in foreign forces. And we see the police force in Ukraine that was trained by the United States was sworn in, and they're ready to go. The new Kiev police are trained. They've taken an oath of allegiance to Ukraine. This is making the first step of a sweeping police reform. And they need this training because when this goes hot, and I'm talking about the major offensive against the southeastern people, they will need the foreign troops, they will need the police to maintain control in the southeastern region because you know Poroshenko is going to declare martial law in this area. You know he's going to enact that law. He's going to say, okay, green light, let's go. We see from documents that were released by hackers that Yatsenyuk, who's the central banker that was put in there by the United States government, central bankers, to do their bidding, takes orders from the U.S. Senate. U.S. Senator Richard Durbin is instructing Yatsenyuk and key officials that they need to follow their orders, and they're telling them which key officials should and shouldn't remain in office in Ukraine. The leaked document shows Washington's clear interference into the domestic issues of Ukraine. The U.S. senators literally stand behind every decision that the Ukrainian prime minister makes. Washington doesn't merely advise Yatsenyuk. They tell him what to do. And we know from Victoria Nuland, when they were planning the coup d'etat, they already had the people they wanted in there, and they picked them beforehand. They got them ready. They vetted them. And once the coup d'etat was complete, they slid right in. And this is what we have today. And they take their orders from the U.S. government employees. It's all orchestrated by the U.S. government. Just like every other puppet government, they take their orders from the U.S. government. And if they don't follow them, they replace them. Now we see another destroyer is entering the Black Sea. The guided missile USS Porter entered the region on Monday. The Arleigh class vessel is to join the military drills called Operation Atlantic Resolve. And we know under the Montreux Convention that ship can only stay there for 21 days because, again, the United States is not a state actor in the Black Sea. They don't have a port or anything like that whatsoever, so they can only stay in there 21 days. The Donetsk Republic is claiming that Kiev is using chemical weapons on them. They're saying that Ukrainian forces used chemical bombs during the shelling of a village in Donbass. Following the firing of such weapons, people had to be treated in hospitals for poisoning. And if you notice, everywhere the United States is where they decide to overthrow the government, there's always the use of chemical weapons. Throughout Iraq, when they use the proxy army to cause chaos there, there's chemical weapons. In Syria, we understand the proxy army there, and I'm talking about IS, they use chlorine gas. They have a stockpile of it. During the time back in 2013, the Free Syrian Army, they used the sarin gas. It wasn't Assad. We see in all these instances, there's always chemical weapons when the U.S. government central bankers go into a country and overthrow an elected government and put in a puppet government. Reports come out that they've used chemical weapons. And then, of course, the United States government central bankers try to blame it on the other side. Oh, no, it wasn't their force. It was the other side, the terrorists. But we know this is not true. We see Russia right now is ready to supply Iran with a wide range of naval equipment and armaments once the nuclear deal is finalized. And of course, as we know, this is not a nuclear deal. It is a deal for the United States government central bankers to get into the banking system to place all their natural resources on the dollar. And of course, Secretary of State John Kerry is out there saying that, listen, the U.S. could walk away from these talks at any minute. And Iran is saying, listen, if these talks don't go through, Iran, they will declassify and publish the materials regarding the talks on its nuclear program in case the negotiation process with world powers fails. And we see today already there was a botched attempt on a terror attack in Iran during the talks. So we can see at this point in time there are certain groups, certain countries, like Israel, that don't want this to go forth. They don't want a deal with Iran. A lot of the government officials who are paid by the Israeli government, they side with Israel. We see others are saying that this deal is going to be good. Those are coming from the central bankers. So we have many different agendas occurring right now. But the main goal is to get into Iran and to control the country. Now, if they can do it by getting into their central bank and taking control of the natural resources and putting the dollar on there, the central bankers are happy with that. Others are saying, listen, we need full control of the country. We have to wipe out the leadership there and put in a puppet government. That's the only way we can be sure that we control this area. And this is the fight right now that's going on. But the goal is always the same. No matter which way you look at it, no matter which way they want to come from, their goal is to get the central bank in there and to put their resources on the dollar. Period. Doesn't matter how it happens. We see the United States keeps talking about human rights issues with North Korea, China, and other countries. But it seems they don't have a problem with Bahrain. The State Department said in 2014, which was a human rights report which was just released last week, that the Bahraini government restricts civil liberties and limits its citizens' ability to alter the makeup of its government, which is a constitutional monarchy. Pro-democracy opposition leaders continue to be thrown into prison, and the country bars international election monitors. And the State Department says human rights protections are lacking in Bahrain, but hey, look, they tried, and that's good enough for us. So now we can sell them weapons. That's basically what they're saying. But they have a problem with human rights all over the place. But you see, this is what it is with the U.S. government central bankers. If they have control of a country, they don't care what happens there. They don't care what happens to the people. They don't have rights. They don't care. As long as they maintain control and they can sell them weapons, have a base there because we know the Fifth Fleet is right there. That's all they care about. As long as the central bank in that country reports to the main central bank and takes their orders, as long as their resources are all on the dollar, they don't care what happens to the people. They don't care if they have freedom of speech. They don't care if they violate human right abuses. They don't care about any of that whatsoever. And this is evidence of that. We see out in Yemen, the situation is getting worse. The people in Yemen are protesting in the capital city. They're lashing out against Saudi Arabia, and this is just not the Houthis. These are the people of the country saying, yeah, we're all banding together now. Now you are hitting the people. You are killing the people. You're destroying our infrastructure. It's not just about a little group anymore. And it seems like the U.S. is punishing Yemen for throwing out their puppet government. And this looks like payback. And they're trying to hit them hard to make them say, we give. Bring back the puppet government. And it looks like the Yemen forces have shot down 2 Saudi spy drones in the last 48 hours. And they're not giving up. They're continually fighting for their right to have their own government. We see the proxy army of the United States is continually destroying the infrastructure in Syria. We see Obama is meeting with the Pentagon to talk about what's next with the proxy army. Where can they use them? How can we get Assad? And over this July 4th weekend, we had all this propaganda coming out that there's going to be an attack. Threat level was high. Vacations were canceled. They didn't want people celebrating in large groups. A lot of the military bases canceled their celebration. And I said this was all about getting rid of the idea of independence completely. There was this fear-mongering. And when we look at the track record of CIA, DHS, FBI, we see that they're 0 for 40 right now. All the alerts, all the warnings turned out to be nothing. And all those people that are being arrested because they belong to IS, we see that none of them were actually members of the group of the proxy army of the United States. There are people that were just looking at it, or They were complete patsies. And they were set up by the FBI. But when we look back in time, what do we see? I mean, back in May 2002, they said there was going to be an attack of the Statue of Liberty. Never came true. January 2005, it was going to be a dirty bomb attack. Didn't happen. 2007, December, shopping malls in Chicago and LA. Nothing happened. November 2008, it was going to happen on Thanksgiving. November 2010, mass transit in New York City. Nothing. Fast forward to November 2013, cyber attacks did not happen. December 2014, U.S. military personnel over social media. Nothing. May 2015, military bases. 4th of July, absolutely nothing. When this event occurs, we will not receive a warning from the FBI, CIA, DHS. Just like the Boston bombing, just like 9/11, they will not be able to stop it. Why? Because it's an inside job. It was set up by these agencies or a black ops agency. And they don't want these agencies knowing about it, just in case someone in there decides to do some investigation and stop it. So we will not even hear of a warning. But when the timing is right, we will see an event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.